It's all right. All right, let's start with a joke. That's a pretty good. You couldn't. I like the way you put this because I told Francie to find me a blonde and a redhead with a bull, and so sometimes I don't give her that much to go off of. So she did a great job though, didn't she?
Yes, it's amazing.
That is amazing. But it's a little bit sad because this bull died.
Oh.
And it was on the farm of the redhead and the blonde, and it just happened that it happened when they didn't have very much money. They only had $500. And so the blonde and the redhead decided, what are we going to do? We got to get another bull. So the redhead said, well, I'll go light out into town and see if I can find a bull for what the money we have. So she found one in town that was only $499, which was a great buy. Boy, she was so lucky. She bought it, but she only had $1 left to tell her the blonde to come bring the truck and trailer to get it. And so she went to the telegraph office and told the telegraph operator, I don't know how I'm going to do this, because the telegraph operator told her it's $1 a word to send. And so she said, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. The telegraph operator said, well, I don't know how you're going to do it either. You only got one word you can send. And so then a light went off and the redhead said, well, send her the word comfortable. And she said, I know that'll work. And the operator looked at her and said, how will that work? So she sent the thing. She said, I know it'll work because the blondes always read real slow. Comfortable. You've heard it before, Lynn? Oh, I thought you had.
All right.
Oh, goodness.
Sometimes it pays to be blonde and read slow, huh?
Yes.
I represent that remark.
Yeah, well, I knew some people would. Hey, when I was a kid, I was a blonde, so I can do that. I was really, really blonde, too. All right, so today's service, the lesson title is Why We Get Upset and Why It's Important. And I think that each of us will agree, maybe not excitedly, but we'll agree that we've all gotten upset at some point for whatever the reason is, and that's just, not you, okay, well that's good, I'm glad about that, because I misunderstand sometimes.
It's all your fault.
And a good thing about this message this morning is, and it just happened because I was out of town this week and wrote the lesson out of town, and Francie told me after her class Wednesday that they talked about the ego and stuff, and so we're going to get into that. But so after those of you that were in Reverend Francie's class get a little bit more into this. But anyway, each of us have gotten upset over time, and we know that because we just look back, and maybe it's just this morning. Who knows how long ago it was? But I didn't mean to look at you when I said that. Not at all. No. But what does it have to do with church and our spirituality about getting upset? Well, it has to do with a lot of things. It's because we recognize our humanness. Because when we think of our spirit, do we think of getting upset? Do we think our spirit gets upset? Some people may say yes, but it's not really true. We don't get upset as a spiritual being. As a spiritual being, we can look at things that happen outside of us and know whether they are spiritually true or not. And so when we look at human things, like you can take even what's going on in Ukraine between the Ukrainians and Russia, and understand that that's not the truth of who we are, either side. Killing another human being is definitely not the truth of who we are. That's killing a part of ourselves, and if we know that our spirituality is one. So when we look at things like this, then we have to be, and this is why Unity's teachings, I think, are another reason why they're extremely important as adults. You know, I always talk about how we should bring kids into the Unity to be raised into the understanding that God is always with them and everything. But as adults, oopsie, I did something. As adults, can you help me? Thank you. As adults, we can figure out, we can grow in our own spirituality and understand how, one of the reasons, you know, especially, you know, even in the Bible, it says, always is telling people to come to God as a child, or come, and what that means is your innocence, and even though children get upset and everything, they are always, how long does it take a child, if they have a friend and gets upset at each other, how long does it take to forgive each other? It's not instantaneously, isn't it? And how long does it take us as adults to forgive each other? Not quite as fast, right? Not quite as fast. And that's silly when we think about it. So, as adults, sometimes we get stuck in our ways and we don't really want to do that because we get more concrete in the idea that I'm right and you're wrong, right? And that's, right, I'm right and you're wrong, right?
Right.
Okay, yeah.
Wrong.
I love that one statement where it says the wife is talking to the husband. It's an old statement, but it's up in some places still. It says, honey, if I agree with you, then we'll both be wrong.
Ain't that the truth?
Oh, no, I didn't even ask for any comments. Okay, so why is it important for us as a church, too, is, I'm getting to know more and more down here in this location, right here where we are in Conyers, Georgia, how embedded it is about the other Christian churches are not open to some things. And so, it's taken me a little bit longer, I know. But, you try to
Bless his
still,
heart.
yes, bless their heart. But, bless my heart too, yes. But, we need to recognize that everybody has the potential within them. So all we can do is plant seeds and go from there. And hopefully that seed will flourish at some point. In Unity, we used to say, kill the ego and you would grow faster in your spirituality. And really, essentially, now we still can say that, but a lot of people misunderstand it. So we're going to kind of go into that a little bit more here as far as understanding what we mean when we say kill the ego. Because Fillmore had a couple of great things, but he had it kind of hard to understand for a lot of people, because if you just look up ego in the revealing word of what Fillmore wrote about ego, then it would be kind of leave you kind of like, well, why would we kill this? And then, but if you look up this, egotism, you'll understand a little bit more what we're talking about getting rid of it. And even in this, I'm going to show you why it's hard sometimes if you don't know what he's talking about, or how he talked and everything. It's hard to understand. So egotism is a state of consciousness built up by the will functioning in the sense world. Now, what he talked about in the sense world is like the human world, thinking God or money is your God or anything else is your God. So when we look at that and think that, and we talk about money a lot in Unity, we do, and it's okay to have money and all that stuff, in which a lot of churches don't say that, even though they want people that come to the church to have money. Obviously, it's kind of silly, some of the stuff that other places do, and probably some of the things we do, who knows. But when you think about that, when you think about how you put something other than God first in your life, then you can get it wrong. In fact, we just had the NFL draft, and I watched something, kind of makes me emotional a little bit. Watched and you that don't know football, I know might not understand this, but anyway, think about something else. But think about relating it to something else in your life. But when my team's the Miami Dolphins, and when they drafted somebody, I just saw a thing of it. They drafted somebody from Kansas State, which is, I forget here that you think when I say K, you think Kentucky, but it's Kansas State. When they drafted a player that I watched, the quarterback for Kansas State, is just so interesting because he was a lower draft pick, 7th round, but he's the quarterback at Kansas State. He did a great job at Kansas State. And, just seeing the emotion in that family and how it changes everything. Because it's a life-changing event for them. They're getting, a lot of money. They're going to be in a different sense of how to live life. And so just thinking there are so many different things like that happen in life, that the big things we remember and we recognize, but sometimes the small things that we don't recognize. And so when we get in the sense world and something big or small happens to us, and we put that above God, then we have to re-examine what we're doing. Because in football, we used to always say God, family, football, and that's the order it went in. But a lot of people would, especially in football, would probably put God, football, family, maybe even football, God, and family. Who knows? But it just gets to that extreme sometimes. But this next part of the definition of egotism is interesting, because if you read it, the way it is put together, and this is one of those things that Fillmore, even in his writings, didn't do really good. It says, in this false expression, it looks upon itself as great, honorable, mighty. But it's not exactly how he meant it. It's what he should have put as a comma after this. In this, in other words, talking about the sense world, in
Right.
this false expression, it looks upon itself as great, honorable, and mighty. In other words, the sense world, when you're looking at it and you're just paying attention to anything that happens in the sense world, well, the name of the game is be the highest on the hill, right?
Yeah.
Get most of the money, be the most powerful. That's the name of the game. And you know, I'm trying to figure out somebody else to use, but I can't think of it right now. I really don't like using this, but I'm going to. I think of, and I'm not denigrating anyone or putting anybody else above anybody else, but when I think about it right this second, I think about, you know, people like Donald Trump. He's in the news a lot, and you know, his ego's pretty big. His egotism's pretty big. You know, personally, I liked his ways, governance, but his egotism was out of the world, right? I mean, if you cross me anyway, you're off my list. You're out the door. And that's not how we can live life. That's not how we're going to grow, either as a humanity or spiritually. So we have to be able to say, you know, understand where is this coming from when we're with people, and it's not to criticize someone else. Like if you see someone else, well, that's coming from your ego and your sense consciousness, not your spiritual awareness, then we don't sit there and denigrate them and say, well, I'm not going to hang around this person because they're just not as spiritual as me. That's not what we do. What we do is we say, you know, okay, I understand where you're at right now. And all of us are at some place, wherever we're at, right? We're at whatever. And we try not to, even though it's hard to explain if you don't, try not to put everybody on levels. But there are people in the world, in the human existence right now, that are more spiritually evolved than others, right?
Right.
And so we try to just examine the people that are around in our personal circle, because we want to be around people at least on the same level and hopefully even a little bit higher in spiritual, if that's what we want to grow into, right? We don't want to stay around. It's like when on an individual sport, whenever I played tennis, I didn't want to play somebody that I could beat every time. I just didn't want to. Because, you know, I would sometimes to maybe help them, but I wanted to play people that would beat me most of the time so I could get better.
Right.
And I wanted to win. So, it's a different way to look at things sometimes. Excuse me. So, it goes on and says, supreme egotism stops the flow of spiritual life in the organism, and the body atrophy sets in. Atrophy means it's fading away. It's dying. Okay? So, in other words, in fact, it'll say in the screen later, I think, when we have egotism, when we have this stops regeneration. I know you're tired of hearing me say that, but this stops regeneration. When we start thinking about only material things, then it stops our spiritual growth. It stops us, and it prevents our body. What keeps our body alive is our spirit.
Right.
Now, some people might disagree with that, but that is the truth. That's the way it is. If you believe anything if you believe God or anything, and you believe you have spirit, and it's going to live on past you, what's keeping your body alive right now? It's spirit. Now, this is where it comes from, and we can prove that easily, I think. Not some people won't agree with it, but you know, the AMA, the American Medical Society or Association, used to, in their publications, used to always be, this is the way this is as far as a disease or anything, and this is the only cure for it. But over the years, they have come to start writing things, even in their association book, pamphlets that go out, about things that they really can't understand medically. This person healed when we gave him a death sentence. There's no way he could have lived.
Right.
But he's okay now. He's 100% okay.
Right.
It's good that we're actually looking at it and saying, okay, I don't know the answer from a sense consciousness. I don't know the answer. And that's okay. Because when we admit that, then we'll be open to something new and be able to grow not only in our spiritual awareness, but also how the two tie in together. We can never have regeneration until we understand that they're tied together. Never, ever have it. And it can happen on an individual basis, though. The individual that lives a long life has some of those understandings with them. We had that one lady that was an octogenarian at the party a while back. And, I would have never guessed that she was 100 years old. Never. I don't know if anybody else would have guessed that, but I would not have guessed she was 100 years old. And it's because she has the life vitality in her. She understands that the life vitality comes from her spirit, which is a little toddler. That life vitality she has in her, she might not be running and jumping over brick walls, but the life vitality in her is. So as long as we understand that is an unlimited life that can do anything in the present, no matter what our outer age is, how many years we've lived on earth, will let us do the same thing. And this is an important question that we have to ask ourselves, and I love this. I probably explained it before. I love this. They phrased it different in seminary. I think they said, what are you in seminary? But this question here I like to ask because we need to separate it from other things, because this is a more accurate question. What do you do for a living? We can understand when we're asked that, but how do we usually ask somebody that? We usually ask, what do you do, don't we? We don't do, what do you do for a living? Because we aren't clear. That's what we're wanting to know, but we don't really ask the correct question because of the fact that if we ask it this way, and we can expand on it afterwards, hopefully, is if we ask it this way, then maybe they'll start thinking, okay, that's what I do for a living. That isn't me. That's what I do for a living, though.
Right.
And especially nowadays, for quite a few years now. I mean, a long time ago, it used to be you'd have a job, you'd stay on it 40 years, and you'd retire.
Right.
But nowadays, for a long time, it's not that way at all. You've done a lot of things in your life as far as trades or whatever, a lot of occupations. So if that's the case, then what you do for a living, it's different than what you did for a living before, right?
Right.
Before, not too long ago. And if we understand that, then it will be easier for us to answer the question, what am I? When you say, what am I before, you'd say, whatever you are. I'm an accountant. I'm a minister. I'm whatever, right? Well, that's not who you are. That's what you do for a living. And there's a big difference. So we have to separate those and understand those to understand there's a difference between my ego and my egotism, okay? When I look at egotism, I'm looking at my ego, which is me being the main central focus. Right? When I'm looking at my true ego, I'm looking at my spirit, which is my focus, which is my understanding of everything, and getting a grander view of everything. And then we can look at things that happen in the world and say that, what I was saying earlier. That isn't his spiritual, or his or her spiritual awareness speaking. That's straight from the ego. Egotism prevents regeneration. That's funny. Okay. Big head. We all have met people like that, and that's okay. And I love the old saying that if only I knew as much as I did now when I was 18, or do now when I was 18. So, because when we're 18 or whenever the year is, we think we know it all. And we find out later on that we didn't know it all. And that's okay. I like Reverend Francie's song is, I'm only going to go as fast as the slowest part of me earlier. And because, if we think about that, then that ain't, if we actually lived life like that, boy, our society would be a lot different, wouldn't it? It'd be pretty cool, I think. Because then what would we want to do? We would want to pick up those people that are slower, aren't we? Not to make them fast, but to make them to help them be picked up, right? Which would be cool. Cain and Abel, everybody remembers this story, I hope, from the Bible. But Cain, being the oldest, thought that he should receive special privileges over Abel, because that was the way life was back then. And this story, even though it's a good, valid story and tells a lot of things and how we should or can live life today in a better way, is misunderstood a lot by if we get stuck in just the literal saying of it, and also the idea that should be applied verbatim for today. It's, excuse my word, but it's stupid for us to think that the stories in the Bible more than 2,000 years ago are exactly what they should be like today. But I can agree with somebody that says that because of the fact that they are the exact same lesson, but it's not in the same context. Okay, so it doesn't bother me when somebody says, "Yeah, this happened and this should be the same way today." Yes, and there's a lot more to it than that now. So, of course, Cain being the oldest, when they both brought their offering, Abel's was more appreciated by God than Cain's, and Cain thought, well, that's not right. You said I was the first one, and I should be having all the privileges, so he kills Abel. Not a good thing to do. Like many things in this part of our life, we have learned better ways to live and to be now, though, haven't we? We've learned that, well, Ukraine and Russia, I guess we haven't learned it there, have we? In some areas, some people still haven't learned it. Yet we are still moving forward to where a lot more people are getting to know there are better ways to handle situations than the old ways. So, again, I think that the majority of us, sometimes we have to, I think, but sometimes we all are appreciative that this is probably the first time that I can remember, at least, there's probably been others, that we've really kind of gotten involved in a conflict that involves war and not been involved by sending troops. And I don't know how you stand, and it's okay how you stand. But I think that's making our understanding higher, that there's other ways that maybe we can handle a conflict than send more bodies to be buried. I'm not saying that negatively. You know me personally, I've said, there are certain things you have to do. Yet, hopefully over time, as a humanity, when we start to understand our spirituality, that we're all tied together, we can figure out that that's not the way to do it. That is not the way to do it. If I kill the person I disagree with, how am I going to grow by understanding where they're coming from?
Right.
I'm not going to be able to understand that, am I?
Right.
No way. I can't. They're dead. I killed them.
Right.
And I'm going to feel just great, aren't I? No, you're not.
If you're putting me on.
Anyway, okay. We got to continue to learn better ways to live and to be as a person. It goes back to turn the other cheek. And it doesn't mean that you're going to, and that story is another one that's been misunderstood for a long time, is when Jesus turned the other cheek, it wasn't so you slap me on this cheek. It was that's the way some people will refer to that. Turn the other cheek. Just forget it and turn the other cheek. No, that's not really what they were saying. So that's for another day, though. The ego, I wanted to show you this. The I, it's not the id, it's not the I am, but the I, okay? The ego is man, okay? So you are the ego. This person, this human is ego, all right? Spiritually, we don't have an ego because we know that we're all tied, okay? The ego is man, and by reason of his divinity, he makes, because man is divine, he or she can make what he wills about whatever. This is how come we have war, is because I am a human, even though I'm divine, I can ignore that divinity and do whatever I want to do. Okay, I can force my way to the top of the hill. Okay? And so he does what he wills. This is where really the punctuation is more important for him. That should be a comma. In this lie his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. Okay? So if you don't read it right, this is really the one I wanted to punctuate. If you don't read it right, it says in this lie, his greatest strength and his greatest weaknesses lie. Okay? Or are. but it should be a comma there after in this. In this lie his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. So in knowing that you are human and you have, because the ego is good because it protects you from things, okay? It's not bad. That's why we in Unity even have learned to grow and say, okay, you don't kill the ego. You understand the ego and what it's there for and how it can protect you and use it for that, but don't use it in a way where it's egotism, where it's I'm better than you. Got it? Okay. All right, this is your greatest strength and weakness. The ego of itself is possessed of nothing. So the ego itself is like a child. It's a mere ignorant child of innocent floating in the mind of being. Now, I don't like the word ignorant, but what it's saying is it doesn't know what else is going on. So it hasn't grown. You know, it's like when I said earlier about the child. How long does it take a child after they have a disagreement with friends? How long does it take them to forgive them? It's almost immediate. It is pretty close to immediate. But with adults, it's not that way, is it? So that's why they're ignorant of the fact that we're supposed to hold a grudge. Right? Okay.
Right.
That's what they're ignorant of. They don't know about. So it's floating in the mind of being, but through the door of its consciousness must pass all the treasures of God. So in other words, nothing is going to express on the outer. We're not going to have a world of peace. We're not going to have a world where everybody gets along unless we understand that it has, which is a treasure of God, unless we understand that we are both human and divine. And see, the problem with a lot of Christianity and the Muslim faith too, especially the Muslim faith, is that we don't remember the divinity part of it. And that's where you get a lot of argument with a lot of people too, right? Don't you say you're divine? Jesus, in Christianity, Jesus was divine. He's the only one, right? That's not what Jesus said, but that's what the Christian religion will say. Most of it. Not us, but most of the Christian religion will say that. But we teach Jesus' teachings more than Paul's teachings. And Paul, just real quick again, Paul, even though he wrote most of the New Testament, most of the books in the New Testament, was a guy, I mean, look at Paul's history. He was learning, he was doing the best he could, but he wasn't close to Jesus. Let me tell you that. And yet, a lot of people pull out mainly Paul quotes and say, well, Paul said right here that Jesus died for our sin. Paul made that up. He decided that, not Jesus. Jesus did not decide that he's going to die for your sins. So anyway, we go through all this. We have to understand our divinity, our part in it. Another thing about it is, if you're in fact, if you want to be lazy, you could go to another Christian church, I guess, and say, well, this is pretty cool. I can blame all my problems on Jesus and Paul and everybody else in the Bible, because once I get saved, I'm okay. But I can go do whatever I want and not take any responsibility because, I can, just go and then be saved again. That's not the way it works, folks. That's not the way it works. When you understand that you are divine, then what happens to you? You have the responsibility to live a divine life.
Exactly.
You have the responsibility. And if you don't claim the responsibility, you should go back to one of those churches and get your excuse up. Get your excuse up. So if you don't want the excuses, if you want the treasures of God in your life, then claim the responsibility of being a divine individual. Because that's what's going to live for you forever anyway. Love breaks through all egotism, though, and changes what we know of life forever. I wish everybody could have the experience of a newborn in their life. Because when it just changes your life forever. When we got grace, it was like, as far as a male for sure, I can definitely speak for myself, and most males would be, it's just like, okay, I'm not working for myself anymore. This is the life I want forever to flourish. And to, must be my egotism coming up, I don't know. Anyway, and to be above myself. I mean, when you're, let me go back to when you're playing football, it's God, family football. When you have a child, it's, I guess it's, because it, I don't want to get myself in trouble here. But, you know, it does change the family dynamics in your family. At first, when you're married or when you love somebody, it's that person. You love that person. And that's a shift too. That's a big shift. But a child is a different, bigger shift. I hate to say it, but it is. It's a bigger shift. And that's really not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because when we understand our divinity, we can look forward to those newer things all the time. Newer, greater things all the time. You know, Reverend Francie told you about my friend Ron Eilers making his transition this week, and it's not the first time it's happened, so I need some sleep. It's not the first time it's happened to me, but I called Ron and talked to him. He couldn't talk, so Lisa, his daughter, held up the phone to him, and after I talked to him for a while, prayed with him, I told him before, you know, I said, during the conversation, I said, Ron, it's okay to release and to let go, because you're going to go on to a new form of life, and you're going to be fine. And so he died within an hour after that. And that's happened to me before. So I kind of put off those calls. Francie told me that Lisa wanted me to call about a week before that. And I just don't like making those calls because it happens. It's not like I'm the Grim Reaper.
It's okay.
It's just that I think, in fact, I'm pretty sure people in their human consciousness and their human awareness want to know that it's okay to release and to go to the next form of life.
Sure.
I'm changing my phone number.
Good idea, girl. No.
Not the Grim Reaper.
No, you know. So just know that, you know, when we understand, because Ron was a Unity Truth student also for many years of his life. So he knew what the truth was about him. And most, I would say everybody does. They have not been exposed to it all the time, maybe for a long time. But they do. And so when we understand the truth of who we are and what we are, then we don't fear death. We don't fear death because we know it's not death. It's a new form of life that we're going into, a new form of expression of spirit. So, you know, spirit is funny when you think about, when you grab a hold of it, then you don't have to fear things like that. You don't have to worry about things that are going to happen in this human part of life. You do your best to express spirit in this life. So love, though, breaks through egotism and changes your life, not only as a human, but also as an understanding of the greater whole that we live in. When you have a newborn like that, it changes not only everything in your life, but it changes your outlook of life. Because not only are you working for the new person in your life and changed it from egotism, and then you switch to your spouse, and then you switch to, you know, both your spouse and your newborn. It just it doesn't put you first like egotism does. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. So you know things are greater than you. It makes it easier for you to understand things that are greater for you. And I think that most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time when you have someone that's a zealot, has a lot of egotism. Zealot as far as religion, okay, has a lot of egotism usually. Because when you see somebody out there barking, this is the way and the only way, and I'm the one, you know, I know the only way, then they're pretty full of themselves. All the treasures in existence, not only monetary, come through our ego. So remember, not egotism, but come through our humanness. Let me change that to humanness. Okay, so all the treasures in existence, as far as material, come through our human existence. which we can understand that we deserve it and we can have it. We just have to be in the right mindset to receive it. But in spirit, there are no treasures. I mean, everything's there, okay? So it's not like we have to even consider this in spirit. Wondrous things happen though when we express our divinity through our life. So even though, using the example of Ron again, even though we see that it is a time that may be hurtful or very emotional for a lot of people who knew him, also we have to understand that there is a release there that is important. Not only in his life, but in the lives that were the caretakers around him. I know that everybody in here probably has taken care of someone that's elderly, and it's or whatever the situation is, medically or whatever, a caretaker. It is when the transition comes, it's a big release in a lot of ways. Not only in the loss that we experience, but also in the relief that we experience through. I'm not going to have to be, it's not a bad thing, but taking care, of someone anymore like that, like I was. And so it is all something that is just a part of life, a part of the human existence. So, actions speak louder than words, though, and thoughts lead to actions, which we know. Unity, thoughts held in mind, produce after their kind, right?
Right.
Everybody remembers that, right?
Yes,
Say it with
sir.
me. Thoughts held in mind, produce after their kind. So in other words, if you haven't heard that before, the thoughts that we have in our mind are going to go out there and do something because we've got them in our mind. Either we're going to get rid of the thought or we're going to do something about it, right?
Right.
Okay. So here's the third part that everybody forgets, is that learning, our openness to learn new things, lead to thoughts. If we think we know it all in our thoughts, then it's going to lead to actions, all right, but it's not going to really lead to the actions that help the world, is it? But if we are open to learning new things about other people and other worlds, then we are more apt to be able to think new thoughts, right? It's just like the medical profession I was telling you about earlier. What if they would continue to just ignore those miracles? Then we wouldn't have any miracles except for a close-knit group of people that knew about it, right? And that's the way it has been for many, many years, right? In the medical society. But we've grown beyond that. Now we're discussing, this happened. We can't explain it. It's a miracle. And most of us in Unity know that a miracle is really a daily thing that happens all the time, everywhere, if we allow it to happen.
Right.
If we allow it to happen. I wish your mom was here today, you two girls in the back, because we want her to know that it's not a miracle for her to heal. It's not a miracle for her to heal. It can happen, and it will happen. It's her birthright. You're right. So Fillmore stated, this is funny, and I'm glad I got to this, because this was said during the 1928 Unity Convention. It was the first Unity Convention we ever had. And he said, in part of this speech, he said, "It is my privilege to take the truth from any source, put it into my religion, and make it fundamental as a rule of action in my life." That is what Unity students do. So I hesitate sometimes to denigrate, maybe too big of a word, or too harsh of a word, but to down any other religion, even my brothers and sisters in Christianity, because we have pulled in Unity. We pulled all of the good, not all of the good, but a lot of the good, all the good that we've seen to this point, into Unity and teach it, and that's what we do. Because the truth we know today might not be the truth we know tomorrow. We don't. Back to medically. Medically, we don't have a cure for cancer right this second. And I even hesitate to say that. Maybe we found it and we haven't publicized it yet. But it's in here. It's in here. And it's definitely in the connection I have with God. All of that is there. And it can come just like that. And we can be that'd be pretty cool. If Georgia is the miracle that happens, that proves and sets the stage for the world to know the cure for cancer, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
And it can happen.
Yeah.
So we have to be open to it. We have to see it happening. From outside of Georgia, we have to see it happening. From inside of Georgia, she has to see it, accept it happening.
Yes.
Okay? So we, as far as outwardly, us outside of Georgia, which is everybody except Georgia herself, have to continue to be positive and say, not say anything against what she's saying, but say that I can see you. Put it on yourself, because that's what you're doing anyway. I can see you whole and healed. I can see you whole and healed. And I guarantee you, even though whatever happens, you know, it's like Ron. Ron is whole and healed right now.
Yes.
Did it happen the way someone close to him would have liked? Maybe not. See, it's funny. We like the idea of regeneration for people we love, don't we? We like that idea for the people we love, because who wants to see the people they love die? They don't. We don't. We don't want to see the people we love die. And just think though. So if that's true, then what do we think? We still got in the back of our mind our human existence of, okay, well, if I don't want to see them die, then what happens? I want to die first. That's against regeneration, isn't it? Both of those thoughts really are against regeneration. If you're saying, I don't want to see somebody die, you know, while I'm alive, then what you're saying is you don't think that they can live forever. It's all subtle things that stop regeneration. And I'm sorry I'm getting all on regeneration, but it's all subtle things that stop it. It's all subtle things that stop us from finding the cure of cancer. It's all subtle things because we've got this stigma on cancer and other diseases that, we hear, she's got cancer, he's got cancer. That's a death sentence. That's what we're thinking. It's not a death sentence. It's a diagnosis.
Right.
And God diagnoses differently.
Yes.
So anyway, I really like this from his first Unity Convention. When we get upset over something that happens, begin looking at it as a way to learn something new about our own life. Because we're getting upset for whatever reason. Francie and I drove home yesterday, and I was driving this car that I have to drive a certain way. Francie would say it's just slow, probably. But it's a certain way. They have safety requirements in this vehicle. So we had to drive it home. And I'm going to tell him tomorrow that, you know, I have never in my life been passed so many times in a drive. Ever. Isn't that true? Boy, we were being passed left and right. Although we did pass a few people, but not very many. So we have to learn. We have to be open and willing to learn something new about ourselves. As we join together and invite new people, we will see new ways to look at life without feeling threatened to change our viewpoint and take the truth from any source, just like Fillmore was saying. So we want new people to come to the church, yet, and we don't really get into this much anymore, really, but back at the other place, and who knows, maybe it is now already here, but back at the other place is like, we want new people to come, and then, wait, they're sitting in my seat. Who's this person think they are? Right? Yeah, okay. That's great. You have a great opportunity today to be with people who are here to lift each other up in our spiritual journey. Will you accept it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's always a good picture to use. A lot of great faces there, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Hey, BJ, I know you're watching, so look there. You're right there. And Jim will watch later, even though he's
That's
shooting right
Doris
now.
in between.
That's Doris in between?
Yeah, she sent me a picture that she took of herself.
Okay, cool.
I want a different picture.
So anyway, it's great. Good deal. So if you accept this blessing created especially for you, please join me in saying amen.
Amen.
All right. This song is, everybody knows this song, but it is, I just like the presentation. So you're going to